Hello, Ash. How's it going?
Going very well. I am very excited and optimistic to be here. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Like I said earlier before we started, I've had like a really long day, but once I saw you on the screen, I felt like an instant reset, like a breath of fresh air,
I'm
basically.
so
So,
kind. Thank
yeah, thank you. You're just so calm. You have like a really calming energy.
you.
And yeah, no, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, and it brings me a lot of joy to hear that I have that kind of effect for people. So,
Wow. Well, I hope like the folks watching this will also feel the same way. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited that you're here. So for everyone, Ash is a PhD student at the University of Georgia, and your dissertation is on emotional intelligence, right? Am I correct? Am I?
yes, emotional intelligence in biology education research.
Wow. And that is amazing. And I feel like you're probably the best person to dive deep into these two like disciplines and topics, basically, because you have been in social work and public health, specifically mental health, for a long time, right? Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, so actually, can you tell us about your journey? Like, how did you even get into social work and mental health?
Yeah. So I had a very rough upbringing. I had experienced domestic violence and neglect as a child, ended up going into foster care where I experienced more abuse and neglect. And then when I got out of foster care, I continued to experience some neglect and abuse from family, friends, coworkers. It's just a very long history of experiencing not great things from people. And so one of the things that I really kind of noticed in my kind of the patterns of the interactions that I was having with people is that a lot of times when it came to trying to confront people to talk about what I was experiencing, like because of them, or around them. I was met a lot of times with like being yelled at, being called names. Sometimes people would get physically violent with me. And all I was wanting to do was to, kind of gather insight and knowledge about and information about like what was going on. I just wanted to talk about like how I felt about things and kind of get some clarity on what was going on. And I noticed that I couldn't even have that conversation because just bringing it up, like, hey, this thing that you're doing doesn't feel good, people would have very like visceral reactions to just that. And so that actually prompted me. There's a, I want to say, so there's a coping mechanism. I want to say it's called displacement. It could be a different word, but I'm pretty sure it's displacement. And it's essentially where you take like experiences and emotions and put it onto something else. And so I see it as I took kind of the emotions that I wasn't able to really process and navigate with the people at that time and put it into essentially me and my career. So I knew from about high school on that I wanted to be a social worker because I wanted to learn why people can be so violent and how we can help people not be so violent. And I wanted to spend my time on this planet helping people be just healthier and um kinder. And so like my experiences in childhood and wanting to understand why I was getting the reactions I was getting is what prompted me to go into social work. And I also have a degree in public health. And what I like about the two is that social work really teaches you kind of how to talk with people and navigate like interactions with people and connect people to resources and kind of learn themselves. And then public health really brought in more of that mental health aspect and behavioral. I learned a lot about behavioral change models. So it was like social work kind of helps you see what kind of an issue is. and where the issues are and where the issues stem from. And then my public health degree helped me understand, okay, how do you take that and come up with interventions to kind of help people um, change their behavior. And so that's how I got into my career.
Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that, Ash. Um, you know, like I know you're like a Zillennial,
Mhm.
Gen Z and millennial. You're a younger millennial, one of the younger millennials. And it sounds like you've already been through a lot. Um, and it sounds also like you have channeled this gift
Mhm.
or this wisdom into these fields that you're now merging into biology education, which is
Mhm.
amazing. But I think I'm going to step back a little bit because I know you've told me before that you were very athletic before, and you have mentioned this word displacement.
Mhm.
And when you were doing sports, was that also a way of how you were coping with these big emotions?
Mhm. Yes. So growing up, I spent a lot of time reading, which was kind of like escapism, kind of dissociation. I also put a lot of my energy and effort into my academics and into sports. So those were the things that I used to kind of help me survive the environments that I was navigating. And that's definitely part of my displacement. And so sports have been a huge part of my life since I was young. And then I had a very bad accident about 5 years ago while I was at work. At that time, I was working as a therapist. And one of my clients, one of the residents, it was like a group home, was trying to harm themselves on some stairs. And in my attempt to try to stop them, I actually fell on the stairs and did some damage to my knee. The kind of damage that's I'm still recovering from. And so I wasn't able to do sports. And so what I would usually do to try to help me with navigating my feelings and kind of process, well, not process, it's actually to avoid processing, was to play sports, keeping my body busy and focused on something else. But that accident made me not be able to play sports. So I wasn't able to, and at that time I was no longer in school. So I didn't have my academics, I didn't have my sports to focus my energy and effort into. And so I actually kind of see it as a positive because it really forced me to just sit and like process my experiences and what I went through and my emotions, which has really contributed to the work that I do now in emotional intelligence.
Wow. I did not know that that's how you got your injury.
Mhm.
I'm glad you're getting better. I mean, physically, right? It sounds like you're still healing.
Mhm. Yeah, I was experiencing chronic pain up until it's been maybe 2 or 3 months since it's stopped being like painful every day. So I know that it's healing and it's getting better.
Yeah. I'm gonna, outside of this show, might
Mhm.
if you do acupuncture, because they can be helpful for pain. But I'm not gonna tell you about my acupuncture experience right now. Um, but we'll get back to that after the
Sounds good.
recording. But yeah, wow. That sounds really intense, and I can see someone that could freak someone out and just never help folks anymore. Like
Oh.
that context. Did you go back to work?
Mhm. Yeah, so I was out of work. I want to say it was about 7 months that I was out of work. And that entire 7 months, I was in PT 2, 3 times a week. So it was a very intense injury. And I was in PT for a long time after that. But I did go back to work after about 7 months. And then I actually got a promotion to a program manager, program therapist manager. And I did that for a few months. And then I realized that I wasn't so interested in the like individual counseling as I was in like the psychosocial skill development. And so I was like, I realized that I wanted to have a change in my career. And I was like, well, I do have a degree in public health. I should try the health promotion side of my background. And so I wanted to move back out to Georgia to be near my grandparents and to also be around some nature. I mean, San Diego is beautiful. The beaches are lovely. The weather is nice, but there are not a lot of trees and vegetation out there. And I was like, I need some greenery in my life. Um, and so I moved out. I had applied to a couple of jobs at a couple different universities, and I got the one at UGA. So I actually ended up at UGA first as a professional. I had a job as an interpersonal violence prevention coordinator in our health promotion center. And then after some time there, I ended up leaving that job, and then I started as a PhD student.
Wow, what
Mm.
a journey. What a journey. Um, I guess like I'm thinking about when you're doing health promotion. I mean, it sounds like you're are you still actively doing health promotion or maybe just not in a clinical setting?
That is an excellent question. I think that I am still doing public health and I am still doing social work just in the context of education. So I don't, when I was a coordinator for UGA, I would go and do programs like in classes for Greek organizations, for student organizations, for staff and faculty. And I would talk to them about various aspects of interpersonal violence. And so I don't do that anymore. But what I do see myself doing is taking what I've learned in my professional and academic career around social work and public health, and I've brought that into biology education research. And so my advisor was the one who had recruited me into this world of biology education research. They were the one who saw kind of my background as something that would be very beneficial in this, in helping to make biology education research really interdisciplinary. And so we work together. We've been working together for about 3 years now on kind of bridging that gap between public health and education research. And so with my research, we are wanting to make or trying to help make educational and like learning environments more like emotionally validating to help promote the mental health of students while they're learning and instructors while they're teaching. Um, and so I still believe that that's very much rooted in public health and social work.
Yeah, no, for sure. It sounds like the application of those fields into
Mhm.
one. I guess I'm just curious in terms of like what what kinds of data do you collect? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so like professionally in my work, I do qualitative data collection. So I have had the absolute honor and pleasure of interviewing pre-health majors and getting to hear them talk about feeling emotions and expressing emotions or not expressing emotions in science, in undergraduate science, and what helps them feel comfortable expressing their emotions, what helps them not feel comfortable expressing their emotions, and trying to get a sense of just the culture around science, because we all know that science has been very open when it comes to emotions and emotional expression. So, um, getting to hear their stories, and just like seeing how, from my perspective, it seems like they kind of feel relieved and happy and excited to be able to talk about the emotional aspect of being a science student. That's on the professional side. When I think about like personally, I do the same work, but kind of in a different way. My favorite kind of data to collect is definitely the emotional, the personal, the vulnerable. I love talking to people about being a human. The aspects that people typically are, that we've been taught and conditioned to believe are supposed to be, hidden away and kept behind closed doors. Those are the things that I love to talk about. Yeah. So the data that I like to collect is that emotional, the real authentic thoughts and feelings and experiences. Hmm.
Wow. How is that similar or different from when you were in a different context as a social worker
Hmm.
in terms of like are these the same kinds of data that you're also collecting before or it's slightly different?
Excellent question. I've actually been kind of thinking about this the past couple of days. So it's funny that you brought that up. Um, it's similar data, yes, but the methods are different. And so there are skills, techniques, strategies that we are kind of taught and trained in when it comes to like therapy and counseling. There are things, and there are also things that we're told not to do. And so a lot of those things that we're told not to do, not all of them, there are some things that are very legit that you should not do, especially when you're trying to help someone feel seen and heard and validated. But there are some of those things that I disagree with that I think are part of a human interaction. There are certain barriers and boundaries as a social worker or as a therapist that you're kind of taught not to cross that I think are what help makes um, those vulnerable conversations just better. Better in the sense of like you're able to get more information because you are having an actual authentic conversation. I'm not saying these things and doing these things just to solicit information from you. We are humans having a conversation. So like an example would be um like personal stuff. Like typically if someone goes to a therapist, it's usually just completely that person and the therapist is kind of supposed to be not a person. And I'm like, I don't know about you, but if I'm going to be talking to someone about personal vulnerable things, like I'd like to speak to a person, not like, a blank face. So that's just one of the things. So going back to your question, I think it's it is collecting the same data, but I think that the methods are different. I can ask things that maybe I wouldn't be able to ask um, in my official role as social worker, therapist, counselor.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
no, that is super insightful. Um, I'm not trying to like make this about me, but I remember while I was trying to find a therapist one time and I tried to just do one screening session and out of nowhere the therapist asked me, so between you and your wife, who's the husband? And I was like, excuse me? And then she repeated the question, and I was like, "We are two women." Like,
Oh
and
my God.
then she just kept pushing the questions. Like, I know, but so who's the husband? And I was just like, I, I don't
Mhm.
understand. I did not go back to that therapist.
Yeah. And I mean, and I say this kind of frequently, it's like, I mean, there are people who are in professions that they should not be in. And so I know I was kind of dragging on the boundaries, but I mean, there are definitely, like I said, still things that people should not do. And I mean, whether you're a therapist or not, you shouldn't say that. And I'm sorry that you experienced that at a moment where you were supposed to be safe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's
Mhm.
sometimes that you can't find like a queer therapist.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying like you should only find a queer therapist, but like this is one of those instances where like this would not have happened if
Yeah.
my therapist was queer, right? But you are kicking off Pride Month, and
Yes.
so I've not touched that yet. And actually, like I guess in the context of what you're doing, and what you're telling me, how emotional intelligence, and you've had this like numerous experiences of just like being met with violent reactions or unsavory reactions when you're
Mhm.
just trying to communicate and getting to know how someone is feeling. Um, and
Mhm.
I can see that being applied to, the queer experience, or some people, I don't want to generalize here, but some queer folks experiences. And I was just wondering if you've had any kind of similar experience, being a Black queer person currently
Yeah.
in the South.
hmm well, I did kind of a little bit off topic, but I did want to plug that I did have a therapist at one point. Her name is Debbie. She's amazing, and she's a lesbian. And so I had a coworker at the time who I was kind of telling I was interested in wanting to get a therapist, and she was raving about this therapist who was also queer. And I was like, oh my gosh, you have to give me her information. And she was amazing. So I did want to put out that plug that there are amazing therapists out there and that there are queer therapists out there. So don't be afraid to look. But going back to your question, um, when you said that, there were kind of two distinct situation that came to my mind. So my most recent ex, which our relationship ended about 2021. So it's been about 4 years since I've been in a relationship. A lot of reasons for that, mostly by choice, as I have been engaging in a lot of self-discovery, and not really interested in dating while doing that. But my girlfriend at the time, she was about 34 and I was 26. So I had me an older lady. And no, yeah. And so I remember I couldn't tell you what we were having a conflict about, but I think there was something that I was trying to bring up to her that I didn't like about how I was being treated. And I remember, and I don't think I will ever forget this. She said to me, "You don't get to have a perspective."
Well,
Yeah.
why not?
Like I don't get to have any thoughts about what happened. I don't get to have any feelings. Like am in this situation with you, but I don't get to have any perspective about what's going on. Like I don't get like that. That doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, no, I'm very confused.
Mhm. Like what do you mean I don't get to have a perspective?
Look,
I
even a wall has a perspective.
think yes. Oh, I wish I could have said that. Even a wall has a heck yes.
That wall could talk. It has a, I guarantee it.
And then
I didn't mean to cut you off.
so no, that was amazing. And then there's this girl that I was talking to way back in the day. We never like dated, but we were supposed to be friends. We were like more than friends, but like not dating. It was very messy and
Sounds about queer.
bonding. You said very queer. It's very, very queer. Yes. And I remember like she also said things like I'm not allowed to be mad about something or I'm not allowed to be upset. And it's like just having these situations where like I'm in these relationships with people and I'm experiencing these experiences with them and I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. And to be told that I don't get to think or I don't get to feel or I don't get to have the reaction that I have, um, it doesn't feel very good. It's very invalidating. And I remember, I think I was talking to you earlier about, and there's been other situations too, where it's like I'll bring something up to someone, and the response is kind of like I don't get to have the reaction that I have. And it's like we didn't even get to talk about whatever it is that I needed to talk about because it was just immediate. Again, like um gaslighting, oh, that didn't happen, or you're not supposed to like invalidation, you can't be upset about that, or like silent treatments, being called names, all these kinds of things, which again goes back to why I got interested in the work that I'm in, because I'm along this along my academic and professional journey, I really kind of started to piece together that emotions I feel like are a root of a lot of the experiences that I've had. And not to say that's the only reason, there are so many things that are going on in people's lives. Um, But like when people feel like I kind of want to throw it at you, Mello. Like if someone were like in a hypothetical situation, if someone were to come up to someone and say, "Hey, this thing that you did didn't really feel good for me," like what are some emotions that you think might be why someone would be so quick to dismiss or disregard or like not want to talk about it?
Maybe they feel guilty, but instead of processing that guilt with that person, they get defensive and aggressive
Mhm.
really quick.
Yeah, I would agree. I feel like guilt and shame, I think, would be the top ones. There could also be some fear or worry or anxiety about like where the conversation will go, what decisions might be made based off of the information that person shares. And so it's like it'd be easier to just act like it didn't happen or project it or displace it onto that person and say, well, it's your fault, or let's focus on you. And then I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a researcher, Dr. Brene Brown, who does a lot of really good work on like shame and vulnerability. And like she really just talks about how impactful feeling shame and like guilt can be in our decision making and our reactions. And so that's what my journey has kind of taught me. Like I set out to want to learn why do we react the way that we react. And I feel like I've been able to have that answer. Going back to the queer question, I do think that along those lines, as a Black queer person, a Black queer woman, I think that sometimes there's also like race things that I'm having to navigate, racial things that I'm having to navigate. And then there's also queerness. Like I've definitely like talked to and dated women who identified as bi. I've talked to and dated women who are still kind of questioning. And I think that there are also situations where maybe because I'm Black or because I'm a woman, and they still haven't really, they still don't really I mean, I don't want to, this is all assumption. Like, no one's ever said this, so I could be completely wrong. But again, when I go to ask people questions and they don't talk to me about it, then how will I know? But I feel like sometimes what I have also been encountering is people or women who struggle to accept that they're attracted to me. When as a Black woman, I represent what society has been saying for centuries is not attractive, is not socially acceptable, is not what you should be striving for. So I feel like that's also can sometimes be a part of it. Because like one thing having to navigate is living your life as a queer person something that you are kind of like ready to do, because that's it's a big choice, to live in your authentic truth, and I've had to accept that, just because someone chooses not to live their life in a queer way, that doesn't mean that they're not brave. You never know what situations people are navigating with their family or with their work or what have you. And that's taken a lot. That's been a big lesson for me as well. Um, and then also like maybe people are okay with their queerness, but I tend to date people who are like white or people of color who are not Black. And so then there's also that aspect of, well, maybe they're okay with their queerness, but not necessarily okay with me being Black. So lots of things to navigate when it comes to being, yeah, a Black queer woman.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, you dropped a lot of gems and things to think about. You know, the I'm going all the way back where you mentioned shame.
Mhm.
And I think it's probably prevalent because there could be religious
Mhm.
roots to that if you grew up in a religious household. And whichever religion, you know, shame is usually um something that like certain churches emphasize. And so if you already feel like shame and blaming yourself for everything, like that could also be something from that person's background. um, um, these folks who are not comfortable with you or being out with you because potentially you are like a Black woman, they are missing out because you are beautiful
Thank you.
inside and out. Um, that's their loss, honestly. And you mentioned something that made me think about something. You just mentioned a lot of things, so I'm just like trying to like backtrack all my thoughts here. Um, yeah, I mean, there was a lot there. I feel
I feel
like,
like it's a lot.
yeah, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in like, it sounds like we can all learn how to be more emotionally intelligent. At the very least, like communicate,
Mhm,
communicate your intentions.
mhm,
If sometimes people don't know how they feel, that's
mhm,
even more reason to communicate. So then you can like process it together. I remember now what I was wanted to say. So in terms of it sounds like you were gaslit in your previous experiences, being made to feel like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. That didn't happen. And I feel like I think this happens because when you think about when you talk about emotions or mental health, it's just so over people's head because they can't see it. But you're in biology education. I feel like if this was something that they can see physically, they would believe it more. So actually, one of your partners, your ex partners, if they had seen you bleeding,
mhm,
if like what was happening was you were bleeding because of like something they said, and like the response from your body is to bleed profusely from your arm, like they cannot look at you and be like, you're not bleeding when it's like your blood is all over the floor.
mhm,
So I feel like because it's not there's not a, sometimes there is, but like in that case there wasn't a physical manifestation of your pain at the time. They just try to dismiss it and gaslight you. But yeah, but I feel like if we talk about it in terms of like that analogy, like your emotional wound is something that's more physical. Like like what you said literally cut my arm off.
mhm,
And you would see my car, you have severed my hand.
mhm,
Um that I feel like if we were more visual in that way, maybe people would um accept it more. Um, but everyone feels emotions like 24/7, even while we're sleeping. And so just denying that they exist is not, I don't know, it's not helpful to the person. It's not helpful to the other person that you're interacting with. And I don't mean to get on a soapbox here.
cool. And
But I just want to give you a hug, basically. I just want to give you a hug. Yeah, hugs. Um, yeah, and we're gonna wrap up here. And I guess we talked about a lot of things. Is there something that maybe you want to share that you haven't shared yet, or you want to reemphasize? Especially it's a Pride Month
yeah.
episode, kicking off Pride Month. So is there something that you want to share? Maybe words of hope for all the folks out there in this current times.
Mhm. Um, well, I guess I did have something, but then you were saying hope, and I was like, okay, it's not that
It
one.
doesn't have to be hope. And I'm sorry, I'm like
No, you're good.
leading you into that. It doesn't have to be hope. It can really be anything.
The first thing that I wanted to share is I came across this creator, and someone had commented. The creator was talking about authenticity and navigating authenticity in an inauthentic world, and how that can lead to a lot of pain. Um, but someone had commented, their username was like AEB underscore 1114. I just want to make sure they get credit. But they said nothing in this world is more valuable than a mirror that doesn't distort your reflection. And I thought that that was really beautiful and really in alignment with what I wanted to talk with you today about, and just connects to how when you're able to know what you're feeling and being able to be truthful and honest with your experience, it can help allow for more truth and honest conversations with others. So that way we're able to get a clear picture of the situation and what's going on so we can make informed decisions. And with that, I want to say that it is really, really good and really, really beautiful to be out. And it is also okay not to be. Um, you never know what situations people are navigating. It is very valid to have fears around coming out, and that doesn't make you any less queer. It doesn't make you any less brave. And for those of us who have been able to be safe enough and supported enough to be able to live out, um, I am so glad that we get to continue to be who we are in all aspects of our lives, and that um, we shouldn't let it's. I mean, it's easier said than done, but we shouldn't let what's going on um, in our environment and in our politics stop us from being who we are.
For that. Um, you're amazing. Happy Pride.
Pride, yes.
Happy Pride. Happy and Pride.
Happy
Your
and
emotions there. Or
and in
feelings.
all of the flags, all the rainbows, all of the color,
Exactly.
confetti
Exactly.
everywhere.
Eddie. Yeah, so thank you again. And I really appreciate you. And yeah, I'll see you hopefully soon.
Thank you for having me, Mello.
Okay. Bye now. Bye for now. And I can't find the mouse. There you go.